Hey everybody, I'm back again. Sorry for that false start. I was having trouble with my audio. It's really helpful. This is a pro tip. Hey Lynn, no sound right now? Can you hear me now? My audio is working on my end. Let me know if you can hear me. I know I didn't have audio when I first started. Okay, yeah. Pro tip, you have to plug in the camera that's feeding the audio into the OBS in order to be able to have sound. So that's my pro tip of the day. What I want to do today, I'm kind of hoping that Pat comes. She had posted a comment on my under one of my videos saying that she really would like to know how to transfer pattern fitting adjustments on her muslin to her paper pattern, and I thought it would be fun just to show a few things that people might encounter in their fitting muslins and they want to know how to transfer it to their paper pattern. So Lynn, if you have any ideas about, or if you have any suggestions for things you may do to a pants muslin and then you're wondering how to transfer those to your paper pattern, just chime in. I'm going to grab my muslin I have on my ditto form here, so I have something to create an adjustment and then show you how to fix it on paper. Okay. All right, so Lynn, do you have any ideas? Because if you don't, I'll just start making them up, because Pat's not here, and it looks like it's just like you and me. There may be a few other people hanging out, but I want to do this, this fits in with my upcoming topics of helping decide what may be a great way to fit your pants, depending on the pants pattern you're working with, depending on the style of pants, and depending on your shape. That's the direction in which I'm going in the next month. Hey Amelia, welcome. Do you have any questions about different things you may do to your muslin, your pants muslin, and then how to transfer those to your paper pattern? Because I'm going to show how to transfer adjustments to your muslin to your paper pattern today. And if I don't get any suggestions live, I'm just going to make some up and show you how to do it, because that was my plan for today. So I'm hoping that more people come and more people suggest different adjustments. I made a bunch of legs so I can show you guys. So I'm just going to switch my view here. And to get it rolling, let me just start by, let's create a adjustment. Let's say on this muslin, and this is just a single leg muslin, but I'm going to work with it. Let's say we had to pleat up the back through the center back seam. Through the center back seam, we had to pleat it up and go to 0 at the side seam. This is something that can happen if your crotch curve is hanging down too low in the back, and you may need to pick it up. That's something that can happen. So I just want to show you on muslin what it's going to look like is something like this, where you're pleating out the amount that you need at center back. So this is my center back seam, right? And let's say you had to pick up the crotch in the back this much, and then you went to 0 at the side seam. Okay, Lynn says, I don't, other than I measure or mark on the muslin, I trace onto pattern piece at safety pins. Yep, you can do that. So if you had an adjustment, the basic idea is you do want to measure what you did here and then put it on your pattern. So let me just give you some tips for this particular adjustment. Let me move my camera a little bit more here. Hold on. All right, my camera is on this giant jib, so it gives me lots of flexibility in terms of, moving it around on one hand, but on the other hand, it's a little cumbersome too. So let me just get this way I like it here. All right, that way you don't have to look at the top of my head in the view. All right, so let's say this was one of the adjustments that you did to your muslin. Now this could be either in the front or the back. It doesn't matter. So in this case, it's the back that we had to pick up the crotch. We blended to 0 at the side. Okay, so again, this could be front or back. And if you're working with a muslin, I highly recommend basting that in and really trying it before you settle on that being your final answer. But let's say this is our final answer. The first thing you can do is you can measure what you took in at the center back seam. So here you can see I've taken in 5/8 of an inch, okay, and I'm going to 0 at the side seam. So 5/8 plus 5/8 is 1 1/4. So that's the entire adjustment. So I'm going to make a note of that. So we have to, on this leg, we are going to make a 1 1/4 inch minus adjustment. And the other thing that you can do in addition to measuring how much you adjusted here is you can measure how far down from your waistline that adjustment was. So in this case, it was 7 1/4 inches down. So you would measure over here down that amount. And since this is not a full-size pattern, I'm just going to say, all right, here we are. Okay, so there's where the adjustment existed on the actual muslin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line across it. Then I'm going to draw another line that's 1 1/4. And again, I'm not going to make it the full amount. Let's pretend we measured 1 1/4 here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. Okay, and then I'm going to basically cut through the center back seam on one line, creating a pivot at the side seam, and I can just push that down like this. Okay, and what you can see has happened now is I've gotten rid of that extra fabric that we pleated out on our muslin right here. Okay, and we've gotten rid of it on the leg. Now you'll notice you have a little truing up here to do. So I would literally I would line it up here and line it up here and just redraw that line in, because technically that should be straight. So see, that's a good truing up, and actually it's giving me, this little bit is filling in here. That's giving me a little bit more room outside of my pant. But you can certainly, sew that deeper if you need to. But that would be a good way to remove some length at center back while being at 0 at your side seam. Okay, so Amelia says, I don't have any specific questions, but adjustments that I struggle with are always at the crotch. That bulky crotch pull when you sit down, I hate that. All right, so, oh, and Lynn says, that's cool, I need to slash and pivot more. Well, this is just a clean way to do it. Now, let me show you something else, though. I'm going to talk about the pulling in the front in a minute, Amelia, but the other thing I want to talk about here is, let's say we need to lengthen the crotch. And for this example, I am going to draw in my center grain line. So I'm just going to mark that, and I'm literally going to just draw that in so we have that as a guide. All right, so there's my grain line. Let's say we have to actually slash and spread this area to lower the crotch a little bit. Let's say this crotch curve is literally, pulling into your butt, and you want to lower that a little bit. One thing you can do is, one second. One thing you can do, let me just draw the line here, is you can do the same thing, making a pivot there, and then I'm just going to slash through. Okay. If you need to lengthen that a significant amount, what's going to end up happening is, let me just get my pink little post-it note here. Okay, so you're going to do something like this, right? Like, let's say you needed to drop it quite a bit. Okay, so what happens now? I'm going to straighten the grain line, because one of the questions I do get is, how do you reestablish the grain line if you made a wedge adjustment? So this is a wedge adjustment, meaning you lengthened here and you went to 0 here, right? So what happens is, if I do that, look at what happens to my grain line. You always reestablish the grain line from underneath the adjustment. So you're going to line up your ruler here, and you're just going to keep extending it. Notice now, this grain line is like way too close to my center back seam here. And what happens is, if you have a straight figure, meaning you don't have wide curvy hips, and maybe you even have a flat butt, you have an average butt, a flat butt, if you swing your center back seam way out here, what happens is you end up with wrinkles down here. And you're not going to know why you have them, because it's not going to be obvious as to why all of a sudden you have wrinkles. Especially if everything was fitting and then you lengthen this to drop the crotch curve, and then all of a sudden you have this mess. It's hard to diagnose that the reason why that happened is because you did this wedge adjustment and then you put the center back or the grain line too close to the center back seam. So if that's the case, what you want to do is literally straighten this back out. And again, I'm starting below the adjustment. So I'm just going to redraw that like this. And then I'm going to take away a like amount. So whatever I added here, I'm going to take off here. I'm just going to do it with the ruler for now. But basically, you're going to create some sort of nice curve that agrees with your shape. So you're getting rid of this, but you're adding this. And now your grain line, you can see it's not quite as close to your new center back seam. So keep in mind, if you do pivot adjustments and it swings the top of your grain line too close to center front or center back, usually this just happens in the back, you can push it back by reestablishing this angle and then taking off a like amount over here on the side. So that's a way that you can true up a wedge adjustment. Now, having a puddling situation on your front of your pants when you sit down, that's caused by the rise being too long in the front crotch curve. So if you sit down and you end up with a puddle of fabric in your lap, it's because there's too much space inside your pants between the tip of the crotch curve and your body. So some style pants, like trousers and wide leg pants, are designed to have the crotch hanging low. So what you would do is you would literally, I have a skirt on, but if I stand up and show you, what you would do, let me just change my view here for a second. It's very common when you're wearing trousers to literally, pick up your pants and sit down. Okay, that's the way you can deal with extra fabric when you're dealing with a trouser or a wide leg pant. But if you're working with a pant that's more of a slack or a more fitted pant, and so it's more fitted feel and it's a closer fitting style, then you need to shorten the rise. And the way you would do that would be very similar to what I showed in the back. So essentially what you're going to do is you are going to draw yourself a guideline. Oh, and let me just show you. So to test the theory, let's go back here for a second. So to test your theory of your extra fabric, when you're sitting down in your pants and you've got that puddle here, go ahead and see how much you can pinch out, right? And then stand up with it sort of pinned in place and sit back down and see if that's more comfortable for, more comfortable for you. The other thing is if you're feeling tightness on your thighs when you walk and bend, that could be another situation where your crotch is not close enough to you, especially in the front. And interestingly, we did a lot of sleeve fitting last week, and what I want to show you here is I showed how to add, more motion or more ease to pick up your arm. I showed how to fix that on the pattern. And what did we do? We actually filled in the wing, and it's making the cap shorter. So it's almost like filling in the crotch curve. We filled in the base of the wing, and that gave us more room, right? So we can do the same thing with the crotch curve on our pants. If it's too far away from your body, it creates tightness because it's a hinge, and if it's hanging down low, it restricts the motion. It does the same thing for your legs and for the feel of how it's fitting you when you're trying to walk and bend. So again, pinch out the amount that you need, right? So let's say, we need to get rid of this much, right? Test it standing and sitting. Make sure it doesn't make anything too tight when you're walking and bending. So I would base that in, picking up the crotch curve, go to 0 at the side. And then when you get the amount you need, you're going to transfer that to your front leg by, again, you're going to draw a guideline across your front leg. And then you're going to measure up the amount that you pleated. So notice I started this adjustment right under the base of the zipper seam allowance. That's where you want to start this adjustment. So let me just see here. Amelia's saying to me, so you bring the seam up higher to create more mobility, like into the crotch or armpit. Yes, it's the same thing, Amelia. So think about this. Let me just put this together with this for a second. So think about this. Okay, so whether this is the base of an armhole, right, or if it's the base of your crotch, if this is hanging too low, you're not going to have as much range of motion. It's going to be tighter. And that's why you can get away with the crotch hanging lower on trousers, because it's not touching you and it's designed to hover below your body. So pants that are designed to be up where you are and they're slimmer fit, the slimmer the fit, the closer the crotch needs to be. That's why jeans are in contact with your entire body around the whole length of the crotch. So I'm going to just, do the same thing I did in the back. I'm going to find out how much I need to remove, like this. And then I'm going to create a pivot at the side. Cut one of the slashes and slide it down. Okay, and you can see what's happening here. We've got a similar thing as the back that we're going to have to fix now. So what I want you to recognize after you do this adjustment is, look what's happening to my center front edge. It's now pitching forward. So I'm going to straighten that back out. Okay, and I'm also going to add a like amount over here, so I'm not skewing my pattern. So something like that. So I'm getting rid of this, and I'm adding that to straighten it back out. You guys see that? I think I need to work with a Sharpie marker. So I'm adding here, and I'm trimming this off. Okay, so see how I straighten that back out? The other thing you may have to do is fix, make sure your zipper seam allowance ends at a good spot. If you cut it too short, or if it's too long, you can change where the base of that zipper seam allowance is. All right, so that's how you can fix the front rise. Lois is asking me, Jen, what adjustment might I look at making if on shorts the fabric on the leg becomes considerably shorter when sitting down? Okay, so the fact that when you're wearing your shorts, okay, and let's say you have shorts and they're short, like let's say they're short shorts like this. Okay, what happens is when you sit down, the fabric slides forward because your butt is pushing back, and your flesh and your back leg get longer when you bend to sit. So I think in that case, that wouldn't really be an adjustment that I would consider. I think what I would consider is, maybe make your shorts longer than you need, sit down in them to decide what the longer, what the length should actually be. And, in most cases, shorts and hems are parallel to the floor. But if you're making, shorty shorts, and I'm just gonna cut these legs off here, sort of a like amount. So let's pretend this is my side seam here, right? Okay, so I've got those put together. I could decide to, start my shorts here in the front. Let me just weight this down with something. I could start my shorts here, and then as I come to the side seam, I could actually lengthen a little bit and have, the back be a little longer. So I could shape my back, and then I could kind of come back up to the inseam a little bit to create some shape if I wanted to. So like a subtle, make it a little bit longer at center back, but then come back up to the same inseam length front to back. Oh, so I'm up here. So literally it would be something like, I could have it subtly come down through here, and then, have it be wherever it is at the side, and then have it come back up to match on the inseam. So you can make it a little bit longer in the back. Not a ton, because if you make it like an inch longer, you're going to see it. But you could actually dip the center back of the leg down like a half an inch to give yourself a little bit more room when you sit. Or just make the entire leg just the length that's comfortable when you're sitting. And when you're standing, they're going to be a little bit longer than you intended or that you have now. So that's how I would probably deal with that. Does that make sense, Lois? I think my drawing kind of sucks here, but let me know if that makes sense, that you could dip down your hem at center back to give yourself a little more room when you sit. Some pants are like that, by the way. Like full-length pants can be longer in the back and shorter in the front, so they accommodate your foot, but also are very close to the floor in the back. So that's not an unusual thing. It's just, I don't know if people think about it when they're making shorts. So know that you can make the center back of your back leg a little bit longer. Just make sure at the inseam and side seams they match, because that's where they sew together. And that's why it needs to be subtle. Okay, so I know another thing that people have trouble with is if you have to scoop your crotch. A lot of times people aren't 100% sure on how to then transfer that to their muslin. Oh, Lois says, thank you so much. I'm very short, so I will try to make the dip down adjustment. Yeah, just a little bit, like be very subtle at center back and just curve that right up to your side and inseam. And that's just going to give you a little bit more room when you sit. I think that can help. All right, so something that can happen when you're trying to transfer scooping, and I'm going to turn my single leg muslin here, I'm going to turn it inside out, and I'm going to show you. Let me take these pins out. Like this. Hold on. Okay, so here is my crotch, and I'm going to highlight the actual seam here. So this is where I stitched my 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm just going to do it down here. Okay, 1/2 inch seam allowance, so everybody can see that, right? So let's say, I'm going to use a different color. Okay, and then let's say we needed to scoop the crotch to get it to fit right. So let's say we scooped like this. I'm just going to draw a second scooping that we had to do. And this was our final answer to get a great fitting pair of pants. So the brown line is what I scooped. The blue line is my original stitching. So what am I removing? The first thing I want to share with you here is, what am I removing from this pant? I am removing all of this. I'm just going to color it in a little bit so you can see. Okay. That's what I removed. Now, how do I transfer this to my paper pattern? This can be a little bit of a head game for people, because where we're removing the fabric is actually within the garment, right? We have the seam allowance, then we have our original stitching, then we have what we scooped out. So the good news is it's really easy to figure this out. I'm going to basically cut myself. Here, I'll use this one so I'm not blowing through a million pieces of paper here. I'm going to cut out my inseam here. Like this, so you can see. All right, so there is my pattern pieces, and I'm just going to tape them together so they don't slide around. And then I'm going to draw in my original seam is here, just like on the muslin. Okay, there's my original seam. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at, let's start in the front. Okay, you can see, oops, sorry, you can see what I scooped here. So what the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure from the top of the front down to where I started. So I'm going to mark that. So let's just say, all right, I started right here. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to measure what I did at the actual inseam right here. So that's like, let's say 5/8 of an inch down right there. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark from the top of my edge of my pattern down 5/8 of an inch. Okay, so this amount right here is how much I scooped. I'm marking it at the edge of the pattern, but the amount that I'm marking equals what I scooped out here. Okay, does that make sense? Then what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to connect where I ended up at the inseam to where I started or ended. So I'm literally just going to recreate the shape. Okay. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do the same thing in the back. So in the back, I'm going to look at where I stop. Here's the same 5/8 of an inch. I'm going to measure from the top of my waist down to where I started scooping, and I'm going to mark that. So let's say it was right here, right? And then I might also in the back, where the actual curve is, like you can really identify where the curve starts. So see how I'm going here, like really somewhere in here is where the curve is. I'm going to measure that too, right? Like maybe we needed to take out a little bit more. So that's actually about 1/8 of an inch more than I took out over here. So I'm just going to make note of that. I'm going to say, all right, so at the actual curve here, I was out here. I was out a little bit farther. So from here to here was where the amount I scooped out at the back of that curve. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to connect those. So I can just bring this in and connect it. All right, so that's going to be, oh, actually, I'm screwing this up here. This needs to be over here. I'm sorry, it needs to be like this. I'm sorry. So we need to go from where we scooped to the edge of the pattern. So I did blow that. Hold on. So it's like this. Like this. I'm sorry, that's confusing. So it's not on the stitching line. You're bringing it right to the edge. So that was a boo-boo on my part. But you're going to measure down to where it is. You're going to make some guides from the edge to where you know, the amount that you scooped. And then this will become clearer when I cut it. So then we're going to cut this off like this. And the cool thing is when you cut it off, okay, so this is the amount that we removed, right? We could actually take this sliver and just bring it over here and compare it to what we scooped to make sure it's a similar width and length if you want to double check it. But basically, we're taking off the amount we scooped within the pattern between the two seams from the edge of the paper pattern, because we're removing what we scooped, but then we're just going to re-establish our half-inch seam allowance, right? So here's our new half-inch seam allowance. And all we've done in this process is just get rid of the amount that we scooped. So that's another, you know, that's another thing that you can do, and it's a very popular thing if you had to scoop. Just identify where it is along the crotch curve on your muslin, measure and mark those positions on your pattern, and then just remove the amount that you scooped. And again, it's between the two stitching lines. Your original line and then where you ended up scooping is the amount that you're going to get rid of. So that would be another thing that's very, very common. Okay, so I'm trying to think of what else I can share with you. What other kind of adjustments would we need to do? Nobody else listening has a pattern adjustment transfer know-how on their wish list for me to help them with. All right, so let's go back and look at this for a second. Okay. Sometimes when you're working with your pants, you actually have to pick up the rise. Oh, wait. Sometimes when you're working on a pants pattern, you have to pick the rise up all the way around your body. So a wedge adjustment isn't going to be what you're going to do, because you're going to be removing a like amount or a similar amount all the way around. So the way you would tackle that is again, let me just cut off one of these side seams here. Let's say we pleated up around the entire waistband, or not waistband, along the entire rise. Let's say we had to literally pick the entire thing up an inch. And sometimes after you balance the front and back leg, and after you've gotten everything to hang properly, what can happen is the front crotch, or the entire crotch actually, is just a little bit too low. One way to pick it up is to pleat through your entire muslin. Okay, so like this. So let me turn this right side out so you can see. Okay. All right, so see this right here? this is the muslin, and you can see here we pleated all the way around a 1/2 inch, all the way around. Okay, so if that were the case, what you're going to do is you are going to simply draw your lines measuring at the top down to where you started. So let's say it's 3 inches from the top. You're going to measure that. You're going to draw across, and you're going to measure 3 inches from the other side, draw across. Then you're going to mark your inch. Let's pretend this is the inch, because you have to double whatever you pin out. You have to double, right? So if you have these two things marked, you're literally just going to cut one and slide it down. Cut one and slide it down. You want to make sure you take out the exact same amount here and here, right? Because those sew together. Now, it could be that you need to take a little bit more or less out here, right? What if you needed to just take out a little bit here? You can do that too. So I can change this to something like this, right? So it's not this anymore, but then it's the same all the way from almost nothing there to 1 inch through the center front. Or it could be vice versa. Whatever you have pinned, you can customize it. The only place it needs to match is at the side seams, whatever you're taking out or adding. And then you're going to cut one and slide it down in both situations. Lynn's saying, big belly adjustment. All right, let me look at that in a minute. And then how would you put the zip extension on the scooped muslin? All right, well, on the scoop muslin, on your muslin itself, you probably didn't hurt the zipper extension, but if you've scooped, let's bring this back, and you can see I literally cut off everything, and I cut off the zipper extension. So basically what you would do here is, after you, if you're really working in the front and the extension is confusing you, I would, first of all, cut that off. So let's pretend I neatly cut off the zipper extension like this. Okay, and that would allow me to then do my scooping and make sure everything worked out. To put this back, what you're going to do is you're going to decide where you want the zipper to end. Let's say we want it to end right here. This is 3/8 of an inch, and then you basically just draw yourself 3/8 of an inch all the way up, and that's your zipper extension, your zipper seam allowance. So that's how you fix that. Gail says, I'm not sure if you answered this question, but I have a narrow shoulder. My body type is a pear, and I'm having a hard time getting my shoulder correct. What would you suggest? All right, I'll show you that in a minute, because I have pants all over the place right here, right now. But if you have a full tummy, and it's not, okay, so there's two aspects to a full tummy. One thing can be you need a little bit of extra vertical length to get up and around your tummy and back down, to the crotch. The other thing is you might need more length here. So what you're going to want to do on your fit muslin is look and see how far it's dipping down, because it's not up high enough. And then also look and see how much you have to extend it out. So what you're going to do is, let's say it was a 1/2 inch and a 1/2 inch. An inch total across the front and a 1/2 inch vertically. What you're going to do is you're going to create on your paper pattern, maybe about, I don't know, if you have a front pocket like it's jeans or something, just do it right below the pocket detail. You're going to draw yourself a guideline, but you're also going to go through to the corner like this. So, when you make a fit muslin, you fill in the front pocket, but it's better, I think, to do adjustments below where that is, even though you have filled this in. So you're going to pivot here, and then we're going to make a second slash and spread somewhere here. And what you're going to do is you're going to cut this through here, through here. You're going to pivot here, and see what this is going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to pick this up so I can then have more vertical length. So you can see now I've added more vertical length, but you can see this is flying up at a funny angle now. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut through the top of my leg, and I'm going to straighten that out. And you can see what that's actually doing is, see how it's allowing me to extend that past the original edge of the center front. So if it's just that you need a little bit, now I'm working with a tiny pattern and I can stretch this past the original. Let me see how much. I'm going to line this up to show you. So I was able to stretch it a generous 1/8 inch, whoops, past the original. So I'm adding almost a 1/2 inch there. You know, if it was a, you know, a tiny pattern like that, that's almost 1/4 inch. So on a full size pattern, that's going to pull out farther, right? So like, let's say, you know, it extended a little bit farther. What you're going to do here is you're going to start here, and you can actually connect from the original zipper, connect it to here. So see, you're just giving yourself that little bit more room for a prominent tummy. So Jackie, I hope that helps you adjust your pattern for a prominent tummy. It's hard to do this adjustment on your actual muslin. So like I said, use the information for how much lower, this much right here. Let's say it was dipping down a 1/2 inch, the waistline was. You can add the 1/2 inch there vertically. And then you're adding, you know, the amount you spread here is how much you're pushing the center front out. So that's how you can deal with adding some extra room for a prominent tummy. All right, so let me just see. All right, it's 1/4 of, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly draw a I'm going to draw a quick bodice so I can show Gail how to bring in her narrow shoulder, because that's a fitting adjustment. I'm happy to do that as well. I see a clip says, I don't ask the question, but that will help make work pants. Yes, well, thank you so much, and thank you for joining me. All right, so let's say, I'll just use the back of this one, and I'm just going to draw myself. Let me see. All right, so here's my shoulder, my front neckline, my center front edge, my armhole, you can see I'm really not a gifted drawer, but let's say this is our shirt pattern, and the problem is, well, first of all, pick your size. Especially if you have narrow shoulders, pick your size based on your high bust adjustment. I mean, not your high bust adjustment, your high bust measurement, so you're not picking a size that's too big. It's better to get this closer to fitting and then do a full bust adjustment to let this out if you need to, versus picking a size that fits your bust and then having a ton of extra at the shoulder. But basically, the easiest way to deal with this is, and you're going to do the like adjustment front and back, you're going to draw yourself a guideline to the center of the armhole where it's mostly parallel to the grain like that. And then you're going to decide how much you need to bring that in. So let's say we're going to bring it in a whole 1/2 inch. That's big for this small size pattern, but let me just show you. You're going to literally cut out the tip of the shoulder along one line, and you're going to slide it in like this. Now, I told you this was a very giant adjustment for this tiny little sloper that I drew, but what you're going to end up having to do now is true up the shoulder and the armhole. And the way you do that is by finding the middle of the difference. You're going to add just a little bit here, and you're going to trim off a little bit here. So that's going to be the shape of your new armhole. Okay. And then for the shoulder, you're going to do the tip of the shoulder and the shoulder at the neckline, and you're just going to reconnect those like this. Okay, so that's how you can adjust for a narrow shoulder. So Gail, I hope that helps you. All right, and as you know, Wednesday is Granddaughter Day, so I'm going to be signing off. I do want to tell everybody that I have a special edition or a bonus video coming out this afternoon, later, or early evening, so make sure you come back and check that out. I'm not going to tell you the topic, but I definitely want everyone to check it out. So I know that sounds a little ominous, but if you subscribe, you will get notifications, so you'll know when it's up. I'm not 100% sure what time I'm going to upload it, but there is another video coming today, so definitely check that out. So this Friday, what I'm going to be doing is altering my mom's dress pattern that I made for her, and in the process of rubbing off one dress to make her a copy to then sew more dresses, I ended up adding more gathers than were in the original dress. So I want to go back and take some of that extra out. So I'm going to be altering my mother's dress. It's a tiered dress with a yoke. So if you'd like to join me for that, I'll show you how to work with a rub off, and then also how to adjust it if it doesn't come out exactly the way you're interested in, or how it, if something happens and it doesn't come out right. So that's what I'll be doing later this week on Friday during FabFit Friday. All right, let me just say here, Lois says, very interesting and helpful. Thank you so much. You are so welcome. Gail says, this was a great demo. I'm going to let you know how this works for me. Please keep me posted. If, send me pictures via my email. My email is listed under every video description. It's jsterndesign37@gmail. And, if you still need more help with this, I'll figure out what next steps are. So I'm very happy to help you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a lovely rest of your day.